Welcome in for an exciting episode of SODFS. We're feeling a little bit spooky tonight. The Halloween season is here, and we're ready to break down the Week 8 NFL main slate on Draftkings. I am Dan. You can find me on Twitter at DanBrownNFL. And here with me tonight, my co-host with the mostest, Nate. You can find him on Twitter at Nate_FFL. Nate, what's going on, my man? Are you feeling as holiday festive as I am tonight? I got my freaking devil horns on here and my goddamn, what do you call it? A trident? I got a fucking trident with me tonight. That's how amped up I am for Week 8 main slate. How about you?
I mean, I don't know that I'm quite as prepared as you. I see you looking like that every day, though, so I get a little bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes for the viewers that don't. But holding a trident something new. All I can picture is Little Mermaid. I'm not gonna lie, bro.
Got my fucking Dynasty Rewind bracelet on, compliments of the FF Expo up in Canton. Me and Brother Matt are holding it down for SOD up there. So big shout out to Brother Matt, who is with us tonight, as per usual, behind the scenes, making the magic happen with all these spooky fucking layovers that we have this week and anything and everything else that happens throughout the production this evening. Hat tip to Brother Matt. We appreciate you. Anything else going on with you in life, Nate? How's work treating you? I know they're constantly, after you hounding you, getting more hours out of you. How are you doing? How are you holding up?
They don't really rate me for hours, but they definitely get the most out of me, man. I'm honestly quite baffled, like how this NFL season is turning out. I feel like we say the same shit every year, like, oh, what a crazy year, and these injuries are ridiculous and shit like that, but this year's got a lot of extra seasoning on it, so to speak. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, neither top 5 quarterbacks. Tom Brady's now announced he's going through a divorce. And, that just goes to show that we're all addicted to something, because this guy has 7 rings. He's won everything there is to win. What does he really have left to accomplish besides love for the game? And I respect that, but he's given up a supermodel wife and essentially his family, to continue playing football. He says retirement is not in his future. So it's just a wild situation. Everything with the NFL is crazy this year. There's a lot of things we didn't expect, including, the Buccaneers record, the Packers record. We're seeing a changing of the guard. It's great to see, man. It's fun to watch. Football is fun this year, which is important because we don't want to see the same old when we watch the game. So just an interesting year. Kind of curious your thoughts on, the Brady situation, because to me, it is the laughing stock of the internet right now. But you got to admit, this guy is literally choosing football over, his wife at this point.
Well, the real kryptonite of the situation is the fact that they're not playing good football there in Tampa. I mean, they're losing. If Brady was sitting here with in the fast lane to win maybe one more championship, maybe 2, but that's not the case right now for Tampa. We have concerns with that offensive line. We have concerns with Brady at this point. Not looking confident at all behind that offensive line. And yes, he's got the weapons, and we keep saying, oh, it's Brady, he's going to bounce back. Well, he's not really bouncing back. I think he's only had 1 game so far this season with multiple touchdown throws. So, it is a reason to be concerned. And obviously, with his personal life, potentially going into shambles as well. It's just not a good look for the GOAT of the game at the QB position. That guy you want to see go out on top, and all of a sudden he's looking like the guy that should have hung the cleats up, held on to his supermodel wife and kids there a little bit tighter, and maybe just hung out in Disneyland for a couple of years. I don't know. But, it's not looking good for Tom Brady from a football perspective and a personal life perspective. The Brady brand will go on, though. Trust and believe that Brady brand is going to go on. He basically said, my brand is more important to me than anything else. So, I think all of his focus is going to go into that, if it's some Twitter quips here and there, a couple of zingers there on the Twitter timeline here and there. That's all it takes for a GOAT in the game. So he'll be just fine.
He's certainly a businessman. I don't know if he'll ever usurp, I don't know if TB12 will ever usurp the Jordan Man logo, so to speak. But I see you got a little green plant there behind you. That's looking super cute. How is the new house going?
It's actually going well. We got some new furniture delivered today. I took the day off work today, so I can't
Fucking
complain.
slacker.
I took the day off. We're having furniture come. It's big furniture. My wife, she's a smaller woman, and she can't be lifting heavy stuff. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to move the heavy stuff around and grunt while I'm doing it, and that's what I did. So we have new couches, coffee table, and a dining room table up there. Put it all together today. It was great. Bed Bath and Beyond, the whole 9 yards. I'm the family man. I'm the family man here in the new house, and I'm getting set up. The plant behind me is the one of the only fake plants I have in the house. But when you're down here in the dungeon where plants aren't gonna, what is it? The photosynthesize. Yeah, no, see, and that's not happening down here in the basement. But what is happening is magic with SODFS, and that's what we're going to get in here tonight. But before we do, Nate, I do want to take a minute to mention our new partners with Trophy Smack and Canva. What can you tell us more about that?
Basically, we were with Trophy Smack last year. They were great partners. They do a lot of work with a lot of people around the fantasy football community. Super great people. Now what's even better is they've went around and hired so many great people from the FF community that have been there for years to work full time for them. We love to see that kind of stuff, man. That is spectacular to see. So we're back with Trophy Smack this year. It's going to be officially kind of rolling out next week. It's a little bit of a slow roll this week. And then what's really cool about Canva, this is an opportunity that not a lot of podcasters get because there's not a lot of visual work on most podcasts generally. We are lucky enough to have Brother Matt here who does extremely detailed work on his podcast layovers, on some of the stuff we roll out on Twitter and things like that. So we've been given the opportunity to showcase Matt's work to another level and also bring Matt closer to you guys and have him give you advice on how he approaches things and on how he does his stuff. He's given me great advice in the past. I'll still never be at his level, but this is a very unique and very, very, very cool opportunity for both sides.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it. Big fan of Canva. We've all used it numerous times since stumbling upon it and getting a subscription ourselves. It's been absolutely instrumental in everything that we do, from graphics to layover work here for the show. So couldn't be happier to be partnered up with Canva. And Trophy Smack, some absolutely tier 1 individuals, like you mentioned. Brother Matt and I had a chance to kick it with a few of them out there in Canton this year. So looking forward to moving that relationship further along. I also want to mention that we are officially part of the Fantasy Points Media Group, so make sure you guys check out all of the great content that Fantasy Points Premium Access has to offer. You can use promo code SUNS22 for 10% off your subscription. The subscription cost has been discounted accordingly along with the seasons in the past. We're at week 8 at this point, so you're not going to be paying full price for that subscription this year. They slashed the prices, but you can still get 10% off here with promo code SUNS22. So do head on over to fantasypoints.com and get yourself some premium access today.
Oh yeah, man! Fantasy Points rules. They the content there just completely changes how I approach every week with NFL DFS and with season-long fantasy football. I mean, I've been going at this for 15 plus years, but the way that Fantasy Points breaks things down, I mean, there's new content rolling out multiple times per day, so I have trouble keeping up with all of it. So well worth the investment, even at the halfway point in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, let's talk a little bit before we get into this week 8 slate. Let's talk about, some of the week 7 guys, some of the guys that we were on, some of the guys that we potentially missed. Let's start up at the quarterback position, though. There's a couple of QBs that we were on last week. We mentioned Joe Burrow and Pat Mahomes, both of which ended up top 5. Daniel Jones was sub 2% there on the main slate, ended up coming in as the QB2 with over 31 DK fantasy points. Anything to add there at the quarterback position?
Quarterbacks I didn't really hit on too well myself, but just seeing things like, Daniel Jones is QB2, Davis Mills, QB4 at under 1% ownership. Trevor Lawrence, a guy that, I was on the Giants DST a little bit last week thinking Lawrence wasn't going to do shit against, that extreme, blitzing package that the Giants bring, but Lawrence proved them wrong. Some of these point totals aren't necessarily something that's going to change the world, but it's all about price per dollar as far as fantasy points goes. the running back position was something that I did hit on. Granted, it was chalk. It was Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, two guys I recommended. Both were very chalky. Josh Jacobs at almost 50% ownership, Kenneth Walker at almost 38% ownership. Both these guys hit really, really big last week. Austin Eckler was the RB2, Aaron Jones RB3, and Travis Etienne at 6.36% projected ownership was the RB5. And, that's a guy that our buddy Derek Brown was recommending heavily. And that's why I plugged him into a lot of lineups, because I trust that gentleman. And it paid off well for me in a lot of situations at 5,400.
As far as the wide receivers go, the Bengals, we saw the explosion of Jamar Chase there, and RIP, who is now going to miss the next couple of weeks with that hip injury.
That's Tyler Boyd.
Terrible. Tyler Boyd as the wide receiver 2 this past week, obviously going to be stepping into a bigger role moving forward, so long as Chase remains sidelined. Juju Smith-Schuster, we didn't think he'd come back and do it again, and he did exactly what he did the previous week. He took a long one to the house for a touchdown and ended up returning great value there. He was coming in sub 7% this past week. Mecole Hardman, less than 3% owned. He put up 28 DK points, good enough for wide receiver 4 on that slate. So those are 2 guys, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman. Outside of Kelsey, it hasn't been sexy when you're putting any of these guys into a lineup. And it went to show they were both hovering sub 7% ownership, and both ended up top 5 on the day. So those are the types of moves that you can make, obviously. And when it feels like dog shit, when you put them into your lineup, that means they're probably a good GPP play. And there you had it, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, both of them turned value.
I've had, to be honest with you, man, I've had Hardman in my lineups. Prior to last week, I had Hardman in my lineups for a couple consecutive weeks, waiting on something, potentially good to happen in that 4K range. And I fucking gave up a week too early, man. And that breaks my heart. But it's good to see for him. I love to see, that, obviously. The tight end position is a lot to be as expected, except for George Kittle at the top. I mean, granted, there was a couple guys missing off of the slate, but Kittle coming in with 21.8 fantasy points as the tight end 1 is great, great, great to see. Will he sustain that with CMC now in town? I think it's unlikely. I could be wrong. I hope he proves me wrong. I love George Kittle. Travis Kelce came in as the tight end 2. With not a great game by Travis Kelce standards, don't get me wrong, at almost 16 points. But we had David Njoku, a guy we did recommend as the tight end 3 at 14 points. Gerald Everett, another guy that we mentioned last week at 11. And then Greg Dulcich at tight end 5 at 11. So tight end's tough. It's always been tough. And that's why we like to find value, as I was going to say, rather than paying up at that position and essentially losing that point per dollar value.
And moving into week 8, I will be punting the position again. I am not going to fall into the Kittle trap. That's what I'm going to call it this week, is the Kittle trap.
It's a big trap. It's a massive, massive trap. I hope everybody else besides us does fall into it. And of course, those watching.
He's going to be, his ownership's going to be probably 20 plus. I can check the projections here.
I can only hope, man.
Yeah, he's going to be up there, and I'm going to be diving deep down into the bag.
You mentioned that Kittle, his ownership's going to be high. Deebo Samuel has officially been ruled out Sunday in the game against the Rams, so you have a lot of merit in saying that. So Kittle's, that's probably spot on. That's probably spot on. Kittle's ownership with Deebo Samuel out is going to be outrageous. I might have more interest in CMC. His price is still ridiculous, and he's still new to this team, but I almost think I pivot away from Kittle a little bit and go with Christian McCaffrey, especially when the 49ers are rumored to be trying to trade Jeff Wilson Jr., which is borderline ludicrous to me considering CMC's injury woes over the recent years. But a couple other relevant injury things I want to mention. Ezekiel Elliott, is doubtful for the Cowboys. Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry are both out again this week. I would never victory lap an injury or anything like that, but this does bode very well for Chris Olave, a guy that we will mention later. James Conner's out for the Cardinals, something that's not too surprising. And then some good news to end this brief injury segment is that Van Jefferson is going to play for the Rams. It's great news for me personally. I know there's a lot of Allen Robinson owners that are probably bummed out. But I like Van Jefferson. It's good to see him healthy back on the field, and the Rams need a little bit of a boost on offense, so why not?
Well, with that news out of the way, Nate, let's go ahead and get into some of our Week 8 guys, starting with the quarterback position. And all the way up at the top, one of the few stud quarterbacks on this main slate this week is Jalen Hurts.
Priced.
Definitely the highest priced, and rightfully so. You could argue that maybe it's not high enough, but that's Jalen Hurts, Eagles quarterback, versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's coming in at 8,300 this week, but he is the top option on this slate. As I mentioned, no Josh Allen, no Lamar Jackson, no Pat Mahomes, no Joe Burrow. So if you are going to pay up this week, it is the Jalen Hurts show. But Pittsburgh has been a strong matchup for opposing quarterbacks and wide receivers this season. They're allowing 3.9 schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to the quarterback position and 8.2 schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, which is the third worst in the league. So the problem with Jalen Hurts is we get balls to the wall Jalen Hurts in the first half, and then they get up big and they are essentially taking their foot off the gas pedal. And I saw somewhere, it's definitely at fantasypoints.com that I saw it, but it's at something like 85+% of Jalen Hurts fantasy points have come in the first half versus opponents. So we really, to get that true ceiling game from Jalen Hurts, we need it to be a game where he's going to have to keep that pedal to the floor the whole time. I don't know that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be the team to make him do that. But if you are trying to just play it safe and knock out the quarterback position, I like Jalen Hurts this week.
Yeah, it's not the worst call in the world. The problem that we get to when we head into Week 8 and beyond in the NFL season is that the adjusted prices are there. The Draftkings has paid attention, and they're going to make the pricing like this price on Jalen Hurts, who came into the season at just over $6,000 for Week 1. Something that makes him difficult to play because, like you said, if Pittsburgh gets behind early, Jalen Hurts, they're gonna back off the gas. It's bound to happen. So 8,300 does scare me quite a bit, to be honest with you, against Pittsburgh. I'd rather play him in a game at over 8K. That's going to stay more competitive. I don't know if Kenny Pickett and this Steelers team can quite keep up with the best team in the NFC, if I'm being honest. But
if 83 is too steep for you, Nate, I mean, there's a guy coming in that you can save. I mean, $2,100. You can save $2,100 by playing this next guy we're going to talk about.
Yeah, thanks for the segue there, Dan. The guy I'm going to talk about, Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. The problem is I'm not super confident in this either because of mentioning Dak Prescott against my Detroit Lions last week, and Dak putting up, a very subpar game against my team. But I'm going to go back to the well here against the Detroit defense that is absolutely terrible. Tua came back last week. He looked pretty decent. He's still probably trying to get back into the rhythm of things. He's got another week of practice under his belt. This will be his second game back, but he looked fine in his return in Week 7. He completed 21 of 35 passes for 261 yards and 1 touchdown. Only good for 15.9 DK fantasy points, but he did play the Steelers last week, the team that we just talked about with Hurts, so that's kind of interesting. But my hope is that he does better than Dak. I had big hopes for Dak last week. I thought Dak was going to come back and kind of light this Lions defense up, which sounds kind of fucked up to say considering I'm such a huge Lions fan. But we put our DFS first here on SODFS, so the fact that Dak let us down has me a little bit underwhelmed. I'm not 100% sold on Tua, if I'm being honest with you. Tua is a guy that showed a lot of big spark early in the year, but we need to see more of that. We need to see consistency out of him to consistently feel great about him. But with that considered, his price would obviously be higher too. So I think Tua is worth rolling out at 6,200 on DraftKings for some GPPs. We'll talk about his wide receivers later too. I'm much more excited about them.
Yeah, maybe this is another Tua double stack week, like we got. What was that, like Week 3, Week 4, something like that
against Baltimore? Yeah.
Yeah, that we might be shaping up for a week like that. A couple of other QBs I'll mention. Kyler Murray, he's coming in at 7,500 this week. They're at the Minnesota Vikings. They're with also Kirk Cousins coming in at 6,100. I think both of those guys can get a little bit of run this week. That's a game that's going to be semi-popular this week in a week that we don't have a ton of games that we expect to be popular. So two guys that I would definitely keep an eye on, maybe look to get into a build if you are looking to attack that game. One more guy, though, that I want to talk about is Sam Erlinger, their quarterback for the Colts. He has been named the starter this week, and he's coming in at only $4,000 there on DraftKings. And I don't know that I've ever seen a starting quarterback with a $4,000 price tag, but here we are. Matt Ryan is taking a seat, and the Colts have named Erlinger the starter. The price alone just tells me. I mean, there's not many guys at any position that come with a 4K price tag that have the upside that Erlinger has. So, 4K against a Washington defense that's been very susceptible to the quarterback position. I like Sam Erlinger. This from Scott Barrett a few days ago on Twitter. He said Sam Erlinger earned only 4 quarters of work this preseason. He went 24 of 29 passing for 289 yards. That's about 10 yards per attempt, 0 interceptions, 5 total touchdowns, a passer rating of 147.8, 6 rushes for 71 yards, and 40-plus fantasy points during that span. So he's got some upside there. Obviously, the Colts believe in him moving forward, at least while Matt Ryan's injured. Who knows? But Erlinger's going to get some run. It's a favorable matchup against a soft defense in Washington, and he's coming in at 4K. So maybe I don't quite feel great about him in a cash build, but a GPP, you're damn right. I'm going to plug him into my lineup. It allows me to go up and get a guy like Derrick Henry or Cooper Kupp. So I love some Sam Erlinger this week.
Yeah, I don't hate it. There's a reason DraftKings has that his projection is still so low. I know that the Matt Ryan news came out a bit late, but I'm a bit hesitant on him. I think that he'll be pretty highly owned. I really do, despite his lack of starts at the NFL level. He's a talented quarterback. I did do a little bit of film research on him when I was doing some work for Pro Football Focus, and he's definitely got talent. How that translates to the NFL, obviously, is yet to be determined. But a shocking statistic that I seen right before we went on air, I just wanted to mention this real quick. Matt Ryan was the Colts starting quarterback for exactly 28 weeks and 3 days. The same score. I don't know if you follow football. The same score as that one Super Bowl that ended up being pretty shocking. So it's a true statistic, and it's pretty wild to think about.
That is pretty wild. Let's talk about some of the running backs on this slate. I kind of sneak peeked into my first guy here. That's Derrick Henry coming in at 8,400. Again, if you want to play a guy like Derrick Henry on this slate, who I think has slate breaking potential this week, I don't love to play Derrick Henry most weeks. But when I feel like it's a Derrick Henry week and his price is up high enough to keep the poachers out of my bag, I like Derrick Henry. 8,400, yeah, you're going to have to pay up for him. But since 2019, Derrick Henry averages 27.5 fantasy points per game in wins, but just 14.4 fantasy points per game in losses. The Titans' implied win probability this week is 57%, and the Texans are allowing the 4th most schedule adjusted rushing fantasy points per game to the running back position. So Derrick Henry is in an absolute smash spot. Ryan Tannehill's banged up. We think he's going to play. We don't know. Maybe Malik Willis comes in. That's another potential value there at the quarterback position. Need to keep an eye on the news and notes. But obviously, I think I'd rather have Tannehill play a little banged up. They're going to lean on Derrick Henry. It's a great matchup. Either way, Derrick Henry's going to get some great run, but Tannehill's less likely to poach touchdown runs and any other rushing work away when we know Malik Willis has that in his tool bag. So I'm hoping that Tannehill, grunts it out this week and gets in there under center. I think that's best for the offense and including Derrick Henry as well. So I do like Derrick Henry this week. This is a game I expect the Titans to just let him really pound the rock 30-plus times if need be it.
Yeah, I think a banged-up Ryan Tannehill is a better threat at passing the football for the opposing defense than a healthy Malik Willis at this point. It's just how it is, basically. Over Henry's last 5 games, 20 carries, 22 carries, 28 carries, 30 carries. They're ramping him up more and more each week, and now he faces a defense that we've been attacking all damn season. So it only makes sense to plug Derrick Henry in again. Paying up for him is a little bit brutal. There's a lot of running backs that have jumped in price this week. So running back is getting a bit sketchy, but there's still a lot of good options out there. I'm going to talk about two guys back to back, something I normally wouldn't do, but they do play each other. One is going to be Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders, coming in at 7,500. He's jumped $1,000 over this past week and is coming off 3 very hot games. And then the other guy is going to be Alvin Kamara, the running back of the New Orleans Saints, across the field there at 7,100. I went back and forth early in the week on exactly, you have the obvious play in Josh Jacobs. He's on a hot streak, something I never pictured I would say coming into the year, but Josh Jacobs is on fire lately. Then you drop down $400 and you have a guy in Alvin Kamara that is obviously a very talented running back. He's not finding the end zone. That goes without saying. If you watch football, you know this, but so basically Jacobs' ownership is going to be pretty ridiculous. I'm going to sum this up in a fairly relative matter, but Jacobs' ownership is going to be fairly high. He's coming off 3 weeks of very, very fantastic games. I think it pays credit to the way Davante Adams has opened up this offense. Defenses have to pay respect to Davante Adams being lined up at wide receiver, and I think that's opened up things for Josh Jacobs quite a bit. But then you got Alvin Kamara, who again has yet to find the end zone, but is very, very involved in this New Orleans Saints passing attack, particularly versus, their running game. Over the past 3 games, he's got 4, 7, 6, 9, and 9 targets. He's getting a ton of work, and he still has that big play upside that we like to see from our running backs in a DraftKings format. So I think you have 2 guys here. You never want to fade the chalk. My question is Josh Jacobs is due for that 14.5 point game. You know what I'm saying? He's due for that. It's going to happen eventually. I promise you it will happen. Does it happen this week though? And with this price jumping $1,000, if you were to pivot off of this, go to Alvin Kamara at 7,100, and this guy finally gets in the end zone, who's still putting up decent numbers despite no touchdowns. This could be the week that Alvin Kamara, has the better scoring week than Josh Jacobs. You want to be on that side of the football in DFS. If you're rostering Josh Jacobs when he comes in at 20% ownership and he puts up a 14-point game at 7,500, you're not going to get yourself anywhere. So I really think this is a valid question. I want to hear your take on it, and I think I think pivoting to Alvin Kamara here is a great opportunity of getting some leverage on the field in GPPs.
Yeah, he's actually coming decently high as far as ownership goes this week too. Josh Jacobs coming in as the number 2 projected ownership with 26%, and the guy I mentioned before, Derrick Henry, he's coming in at 22%. A lot of these running backs are pretty popular this week.
What is Kamara's ownership?
Kamara was coming in at 20%.
Oh, wow. That's a lot higher than I thought, to be honest.
So all these guys, and the guy that I'm about to talk about, Tony Pollard, he's the number 1 chalkiest play on this slate, coming in at 31%, and with Josh Jacobs being number 2 at 26%. But as we mentioned, Zeke is doubtful, so obviously instantly the explosive Tony Pollard that we've all been yearning for to get more work is scheduled to be the Cowboys RB1 this week. And, we don't have many instances in which Tony Pollard was serving as the RB1 because Zeke is Iron Man and hardly ever misses games. But we did see one career game in which Zeke did not play and Pollard was serving as the starting running back. He saw 9 targets, had 132 total yards, and went for 31.2 DK fantasy points. Okay, so obviously capable of the workload. Dallas kind of laid a stinker this past week. I think they want to bounce back. I do like Dak this week and maybe some CeeDee Lamb going back to him. I don't think tons of people will, but Tony Pollard is going to be super popular. The Bears, however, are a pretty brutal matchup for opposing outside wide receivers, so keep that in mind with your Michael Gallups and potentially CeeDee Lamb, who will work inside. But opposing wide receivers are allowing minus 9.2 schedule adjusted fantasy points per game. So it's really setting up for more of a run game there for the Cowboys, who are struggling to find their identity after getting Dak Prescott now back into the lineup. I think they are going to lean on Tony Pollard a decent amount this week. And if it ends up being in the receiving game, that's fine with me too. We're here on DK where that's a point per reception. So Tony Pollard, 6,100. He is chalk this week, but I do love him this week as well.
I think it can be argued at this point that Tony Pollard has the better upside and almost, I hate to say it, but the better talent than Ezekiel Elliott. At this point in Zeke's career, I don't know if I'll get shit on for that or not, but I would much rather play Tony Pollard over Ezekiel Elliott if both are even healthy, and considering that Zeke is doubtful. I do like Pollard. I have gotten burned very heavily this year from chalk running backs. Obviously, last week was not the case, but if you look at the season as a whole, going back to like David Montgomery and guys like that, I've gotten pretty fisted on a few chalky running backs that I should have avoided. But I'm going to talk about another guy that's going to absolutely be chalk, a guy we mentioned last week. That's Kenneth Walker, the third of the Seattle Seahawks. He's up to 6,500. He was 5,800 last week, so the discount is officially gone. Walker got a majority of the workload in the backfield for Seattle in each of the last 2 weeks following the season-ending injury to Rashad Penny, as we all know. What is appealing this week? The Giants are permitting the second most yards per attempt at 5.7 to running backs. And there isn't anyone on Seattle's roster that is going to take touches away from Kenneth Walker. So it's hard to ignore Walker, even with the price jump. I think that just like Josh Jacobs, Walker's due for a dud game. It's hard to say. He's a rookie. He's still proving himself quite a bit. But when you get up to 6,500, you need a lot more fantasy points to hit value. So gone is, that 15, 16 point area where he's gonna put that flame up there on your DraftKings app for you. You're looking more in the 20 point range at this point. So it's a risky play. I think a lot of people are still going to be on him. I think he's still a really solid play given the Giants' defense against opposing running backs. So I thought he was well worth mentioning here. At 6,500, I think his price will actually go up higher this week because I think he has a successful week. I still believe in Kenneth Walker at this price tag.
Yeah, I like Kenneth Walker this week again, too. They're going to continue to lean on him. A couple of other cheaper running backs. I'll go Raheem Mostert, Miami Dolphins. They're at Detroit, 5,900. His price actually dropped this week from 6.2 this past week. And I'm not really sure why, because he's logged at least a 61% snap share in 14 touches in his last 4 games, making him only one of 4 running backs to accomplish these metrics in the last 4 weeks, joining the likes of Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and Saquon Barkley. The usage is there. Now we get a great matchup versus Detroit, who is allowing the second most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs this season with 29.5 per game. That's the third highest yards per carry at 5.3 and the second worst rushing yards per game with 162.8. Raheem Mostert getting the usage there for the Miami Dolphins, and he gets a cake matchup in Nate's Detroit Lions. Motor City can't stop anything.
No, that's 100% fair. What's up, Will? It's good to see you here, Will. Will's a big supporter of the show, so shout out to Will. The last running back we're going to mention is Tyler Allgeier of the Atlanta Falcons, your Atlanta Falcons. It's not a sexy play at 5,400. He's putting up barely double-digit points in PPR formats. But basically, I'll break it down like this in a very fast way. No offense, Dan, but Atlanta's offensive tack goes run, pass, punt. So you're getting 2 running plays. It is what it is, bro. You're getting 2 running attempts out of Tyler Allgeier to start the drive. Cordero Patterson is not expected back until next week. I mean, he's officially out of commission this week. Might be back next week. But Allgeier has gotten 10 rush attempts, 13, 15, 16 over the past 4 games. He's worth the play at 5,400. 5,400 doesn't take a lot to find value. If he falls into the end zone, you are golden. So worth a mention.
The best part about him is with Atlanta, he's essentially game script proof because it doesn't matter if we're down 3, even 4 touchdowns. We can be down 20, 21 plus points like we were this past week to the Bengals, and we're still going to choose to run the ball. So don't worry about the Falcons getting down to Carolina. He is game script proof. It does not matter. Atlanta's going to continue to run the ball. It doesn't matter what the score is. we're going to run the ball. We're just going to keep running it and running it and running it and letting those linebackers practice their tackling. So
it would literally still be run, pass, punt. I mean, I can draw up the defense if you need me to. But before we move into the wide receiver portion of our show / the second half of our show, I do want to again mention Canva. Obviously, the layovers you're seeing on the screen, Brother Matt has created. They are fucking beautiful. And I'm not just saying that. We get compliments more on our layovers than we do on anything with this show. People are very, very drawn into them. They look great. They're sharp. Brother Matt is always working on improving them. He never settles each week and says, oh, I found a good one. He's constantly working on these things. And you can get advice from him for free by using our link. The link will be in the show description. We'll post it in the comments as well. But if you want to sign up for Canva, you can get free advice from Brother Matt, the best in the industry, hands down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you want your podcast, if you're doing a live stream, anything like that, if you want it to look as good as this, if not better, you could even improve. You can talk to Brother Matt. You can use our link, and we'll be here to help. Brother Matt will obviously be in your corner. And it's just a great opportunity for everybody to grow, because looking good is just as important as putting out good content as far as live streaming and podcasting.
That's right. Speaking of looking good, let's talk about wide receivers, because the wide receivers on this slate are looking pretty good. We mentioned you like Tua Tagovailoa this week. Let's talk about his wide receivers and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, so I do have a hard time getting away from Tyreek Hill this week. Even if I have hesitations on Tua, I'm still going to lean into Tyreek Hill. I jumped on Draftkings on Tuesday morning, and I was building lineups early just to get a feel for what the pricing was. And I noticed almost every time I'm clicking on Tyreek Hill as the first player I'm putting into my lineups against this Detroit Lions defense that I love and hate at the exact same time. Notable wide receivers versus the Lions just this year. This is how their stats look. A.J. Brown week 1, 28.5 points. Jacoby Myers week 5 of the Patriots, 27 points. DK Metcalf week 4 of the Seattle Seahawks, basically 25 DK fantasy points. And then Curtis Samuel week 2, that one I obviously stung. I watched it back a few times, 23 DK fantasy points. So Tyreek Hill has averaged 22.4 points on the year, double-digit targets in 5 of his 7 games, and that's all with inconsistent quarterback play, obviously given the scary Tua injury that happened a few weeks back. I think the Tua Waddle Hill stack is going to be super interesting this week. I also think it's going to be super popular again, which makes me hesitate given the fact that I stacked multiple Cowboys last week and it did fail. So I have hesitation here, but I think the potential upside is obviously very high as well. So I will say that you can play Tua, Waddle, and Hill with caution is what I will say. I'll say play them with caution, given, how we've seen the Cowboys basically do mediocre against a defense that is just not good at all in my Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I like them this week for sure. DeAndre Hopkins is another guy that I'm interested in. He's at 7,400 this week. I mentioned that game with the Cardinals and the Vikings. Well, DeAndre Hopkins in his first game back from suspension, he earned 21.9 expected fantasy points, which was the 6th best among all players on last week's slate, and then 50% target share on the week. He was absolutely getting peppered with targets. He seldom leaves the left side of the field. 83% of his snaps came from the left outside wide receiver alignment last year, and that trend continues here in 2022. The Vikings are the 6th best matchup for opposing left outside wide receivers this season, allowing 3.2 schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game. If he's going to get that kind of a target share in an offense, this is a game that we're expecting them to potentially go back and forth. We like the over-under on this one. DeAndre Hopkins, 7,400. And if you're looking to get, potentially away from Jalen Hurts, step on down to Kyler Murray there, who I think was, coming in at 7,400. Is that right?
Yep.
7,500 this week.
Oh.
So if that is the case, DeAndre Hopkins is really the only guy that I'm interested in bringing along. James Conner has been ruled out, so it's going to be more of what we saw this past week with the DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray show. Benjamin mixing in, but he's kind of been priced up at this point too, hovering in the 6K range. So don't know that I'm that interested in Benjamin, but potentially if the field is not, I will be a little bit more.
For me, there's no other Cardinals I will even consider as far as receiving goes. I mean, maybe Zach Ertz here and there. He's been fairly consistent with a low ceiling, so I don't mind Zach Ertz too much. But Hopkins is the guy I'm looking at. I mean, he's healthy and has something to prove. So I'm all about DeAndre Hopkins. His price is probably only going to go up as the season continues. But another guy that has something to prove, and a guy that I'm very, very excited about this week, which I couldn't really get excited about until, the news developed. But that's Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. He's $6,000 on DraftKings at home versus the Raiders this week. Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry have both been ruled out, which opens up the door for Olave to, again, have a big game. Even with Andy Dalton, the quarterback, I've heard rumors that Jameis Winston may be back. I'm not 100% sure. But the fact of the matter is Chris Olave leads the NFL at 912 air yards at this point in the season, which is a very, very promising statistic for an NFL rookie. So, I don't have maybe a ton to say on this. I think Olave, you plug him in at $6,000. I think the price is still too low considering the consistency that he has had over the last few weeks. I don't think there's a lot to this. You play Olave with both Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas out yet again. Any thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, no, I like Olave. As long as those two guys are out, I mean, you can pretty much pencil him in as the number one weapon there outside of Alvin Kamara there, but it's essentially in the passing game. Chris Olave, he's coming in at 17% projected ownership as of right now. That may go up a hair as news continues to trickle out that Michael Thomas and both Jarvis Landry will be out. So Chris Olave is going to be one of a decent chalk wide receiver, but not quite as high as the next guy you're going to talk about in DJ Moore, Carolina Panthers against my Atlanta Falcons, who love giving it up to the quarterback and wide receiver position. 5,300. DJ Moore still getting no respect in his price tag, even after hitting the pay dirt this past week.
Well, DJ Moore is a weird situation. It's somebody we've only talked about, I wouldn't say necessarily like negatively as him of his abilities, but just the situation, so to speak, in Carolina. But the fact of the matter is that DJ Moore, because of the way the 2022 season has gone up to this point, his price is down to $5,300. But this guy is still a super talented receiver. And what you now have to consider is Christian McCaffrey is no longer in Carolina. So you have a wide receiver that is going to have a lot of opportunities for dump offs, maybe those, so to speak, easy catches that are going to get him points on DraftKings. Moore had a nice game in PJ Walker's first start, something we were all very cautious about. He had a 28% target share on the year, 39.5% share of the air yards. That doesn't really work when your team's at the bottom of the league in points and yardage, but Moore's floor seems a bit higher than 5.3K would suggest on DraftKings is all that I want to say. So I'm not expecting the world out of this guy, but I do think with Christian McCaffrey gone out of Carolina, obviously that target share's got to go somewhere, right? Even with PJ Walker at quarterback. So I think $5,300, you don't have a lot to lose here. Play DJ Moore. This kid's still good at football. And see, if he can boom on that upside, he definitely has something to prove too. Speaking of guys that have something to prove, this guy wants to prove himself. And with or without, a, so to speak, great quarterback, I think that DJ Moore is in a nice spot. I would even say maybe rest the season.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, my Atlanta Falcons love to give it up. They are the ultimate pass funnel defense, allowing the highest pass rate over expectation in the league currently, and they rank as the third best matchup for opposing wide receivers by schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to the position. It's a great spot for DJ Moore this week, and he is going to be Semi-popular, again, as I mentioned, coming in at around 23% projected ownership. That's good enough for top 3 wide receiver ownership projections. So love DJ Moore this week. Another guy that I like this week is my guy, Wan'Dale Robinson, there for the New York Giants. They're playing against the Seattle Seahawks. 4,700 this week, projected ownership of 12%. He might be the only man in town for the Giants, but the numbers are popping. He's leading the Giants in total points per route run with 0.29, and that mirrors the likes of Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson coming in at 0.28 and 0.27. The Giants will be shorthanded outside of Barkley. Daniel Jones, our guy, Wan'Dale Robinson expected to be the main passing key cog there this week. So great volume, and potentially his very first double-digit target game could be this week at Seattle. We know Seattle's capable of putting up some points. Daniel Jones and co will have to try to keep up. I like Wan'Dale Robinson at 4,700 this week.
Yeah, there's a lot to like there, man. There's a lot of people on him. I do wonder what his ownership will be come the main slate lock on Sunday, but there's a lot of people on Wan'Dale Robinson, and for good reason. I've had to add him in quite a few season-long leagues just to kind of fill some holes from the never-ending list of fucking injuries that we have, over on the fantasy football side of things.
Any other wide receivers you want to mention before we talk about the tight end position, the anchor?
Yeah. No, I think that I think we've covered wide receivers pretty good. Wide receivers has been tough this year, but keep following us as we head into the weekend, and we'll drop some, any late advice we have on Sunday morning on both the Sons of Dynasty Twitter and our personal Twitters as well.
Yeah, I'll try to put up some of the values that are popping Sunday morning as well. I like to get those out there. The guys that are expected as far as fantasy points per dollar value, love using those, plus projected ownerships. Those are the main 2 tools that I use on a weekly basis when I'm trying to generate some GPP lineups and potentially even cash lineups. So all that stuff is readily available at fantasypoints.com. Sign up for a premium subscription today. Use promo code SUNS22 for 10% off. Again, they have slashed the prices for the remaining of the year, so you can get in, and it only takes 1 week to bring back value, if I'm being honest with you. So head on over to fantasypoints.com. Use promo code SUNS22. Get in there. Score more with us this week.
100%. So we're going to move into tight ends. Before we do, I'm going to also quickly kind of tie this into a wide receiver thing that we had just mentioned. The wide receiver that I want to mention is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He still has not cleared concussion protocol for the Detroit Lions. It is expected for Kyle Meineke of M Live, a guy that I know very well. Kyle's a great reporter. Kyle expects Amon-Ra St. Brown to play. So the guy that I'm going to mention at the tight end position to kind of kick things off at the tight ends for us is TJ Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions. This play is going to be very tentative on the Amon-Ra St. Brown news. If Brown does play, Hawkinson does concern me a bit. Hawkinson's a guy I've been high on for, since he entered the career out of Iowa. But on the year, Hawkinson has been relatively disappointing, so to speak. 23 receptions on 39 targets, 315 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. The only real relative fantasy week that we've seen out of TJ Hawkinson was back in week 4 when he had 8 catches on 12 targets for 179 yards and 2 touchdowns, which resulted in basically 43 DK fantasy points. Outside of that, week 3, Hawkinson did have 10.9 DraftKings points. And then outside of that, he's been relatively quiet, man. Even as the tight end 3 on the year, I believe I've seen somewhere. I could be wrong on that. But Hawkinson is a guy I was huge on. I've heard rumors that the Lions may be shopping him. And personally, as a Lions fan, I don't even hate it, man. We were quick to shit on Eric Ebron, when he was in town. We were quick to ship him out. A lot of Lions fans are all about TJ Hawkinson. I was all about TJ Hawkinson. I haven't really seen, him live up to that 8 overall pick. So the Lions want to trade him. I'm not going to hate on it. But as far as DraftKings goes this week, Hawkinson is a valuable play at 4,900 if for some reason Amon-Ra St. Brown was not cleared to play by either NFL doctors / the NFLPA, which is definitely has their hands in on player decision making as far as concussions go at this point.
Love that call, Nate. I'm going to talk about Irv Smith going back to the Vikings-Cardinals game. He's coming in at 3,500 this week. 3,500 is in my wheelhouse when I'm talking about a cheap tight end. And the Cardinals have historically been a great matchup for the tight end position. This season has been no different. They currently rank 31st in adjusted points to the position. And just this past week, they allowed our guy, Jawan Johnson, to go 5 for 5 for 2 tutties. Minnesota has the third highest implied team total of the Week 8 main slate there with 26 points. And on a slate with no bona fide stud tight ends outside of Kittle, in which I said that I'm already kind of not interested in this week, I do like Irv Smith this week. I think he gets there. Give me Irv at 3,500 there. I'll play him in cash or potentially a GPP if I'm looking to save a little bit of cash there at the position.
Yeah, I'm right there with you basically as far as saving money at tight end. We've seen the proof on why we need to do this. I don't hate Irv, but I do love Harrison Bryant. Tight end of the Cleveland Browns. David Njoku is set to miss the next few weeks. Bryant is now the tight end 1 for the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, Njoku has been a top 5 tight end in PPR scoring heading into week 7, making Bryant, a fairly exciting option in his replacement. Now, granted, that all said, Bryant is not David Njoku. He does not have the athletic ability. I will admit all that. But those vacated targets and the opportunity is going to go somewhere. Could it be Amari Cooper? Probably. Who knows? But Harrison Bryant at 2,500 is a low-risk, high-reward situation. Something you want a lot at tight end, especially at the midpoint in the NFL DFS season.
Yeah, I love that. A $2,500 price tag? Yeah, come on. I love that. I love that price tag. I love Harrison Bryant. It's a prospect that we've wanted to see thrive, and they decided to give Njoku the bag, and so Harrison Bryant remains in a reserve role. Well, Njoku's banged up. Harrison Bryant, it's your time to shine. Let's do it, 2,500. Let's win some money this week. Another cheap tight end that I'm going to mention, potentially one of the punts of the week here, and that's Chris Myarick there for the tight end for the New York Giants. Yeah, you might be asking yourself, who the hell is Chris Myarick? I've never even heard of him before. Well, that's right. None of us have until this week. It's the next man up. Daniel Bellinger had some sort of a gruesome eye injury, and he's going to be unable to suit up. So who is it? I told you I'm into Wan'Dale Robinson. Why? Because there's nobody else to throw the ball to there for the Giants. That's why I'm talking about Chris Myarick. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about him. I haven't watched any film. He's a pure punt play at the position and a guy that could potentially get some run here against these Seattle Seahawks this week. He's 2,800. Do I like Harrison Bryant at 2,500 better? Yeah, I do. But I think Harrison Bryant's probably going to end up hovering around 10% ownership, while our guy Chris Myarick's going to be sub 1. And when we're talking milli makers, we're talking GPPs, that's what you got to be. You got to be a fucking difference maker. Chris Myarick, he's going to be the difference maker this week.
All right. That's fair. I mean, that's fair. I'm playing Harrison Bryant. You heard it here first, folks. Don't point that at me.
Fucking, I was pointing it at Rusty. We got Rusty in the chat, man. SOD, Infiltration, SODFS. Love Rusty, man. Shout out, hat tip to Rusty. Let's give SODFS a hat tip to Rusty. Love that guy.
Yeah, big shout out to Rusty. If he wasn't in the chat, my boot would be in his asshole, but that goes without saying.
Well, let's move on into the closing segments of the show before it gets any more awkward than it just did. I want to take a minute to bring up fantasypoints.com once again. You have access to the newest and best website in the industry for your season-long daily fantasy and NFL betting needs. Access to articles, live streams, podcasts, cheat sheets, community chats, online tools, and more, all available at your fingertips. It's the only subscription you will need. Prices have been slashed now that we are 8 weeks into the NFL season. You can still sign up today, though, using promo code SUNS22 and get 10% off. Go check it out, because if you ride with SODFS and Fantasy Points, you will score more in 2022 and beyond. Nate, let's talk a couple of DSTs to consider before we get out of here.
Yeah, there's a few that I like. One being the Miami Dolphins at 3,500. The Dallas Cowboys DST was the highest scoring DST last Sunday at 22 DraftKings fantasy points against my very, very fucking pitiful Detroit Lions offense. Then we're gonna go same game here. You can play either one: New England DST and or New York Jets DST. $3,000, $2,900 for each. Washington DST versus Indy, and that rookie, not rookie, but first NFL start for Sam Ehlinger, $2,600. And then we got Arizona. This DST appeals to me a lot, $2,500 against Minnesota. Kirk Cousins has not looked great this year, and the Cardinals DST has been picking the football off. So do not sleep on this DST. You want to save some money, drop down there to Arizona, 2,500, plug them in. Worst they're going to do, maybe put up 5-6 fantasy points for you, which is fine at that price.
Yeah, man, I'm always looking to punt at the DST position to match my punt there at the tight end position because I want to pay up for the guys that matter. That's those running backs that I mentioned have gotten pretty pricey this week, and a couple of those wide receivers that we really like. Yeah, I'll punt it at QB, punt at tight end, and punt there at the DST. Fill studs in and the rest of your build. That's that stars and scrubs approach. I'm feeling it this week. This is kind of a weird week. Don't be afraid to do something that makes you uncomfortable. I mean, when you're uncomfortable, that's how you know that you're in a good place. So, just do that.
You should probably feel uncomfortable with them horns the way they're looking on your hat. But
hey, you mess with the bull, baby, you get the horns. You know what the deal is.
Fair enough.
Hey, appreciate everybody that did tune in with us tonight. Please make sure that you are subscribed to the SOD YouTube page. Click the bell so that you never miss a show with us. If you're listening to us via podcast, leave us a rate and review. It helps out more than you know. Big thank you to Fantasy Points Media Group for allowing us to be a part of the growth, and we want to score more with you today. Big shout out to Brother Matt, hat tip to our guy, as we mentioned, putting down the legwork each and every week for us to look absolutely electric on a weekly basis. Go check out ViridianGlobal.com so that way you can get any and all SOD gear that you might be interested in, as well as a plethora of other fantasy football entities, all available there at your fingertips. So please do stay with us all season long, as we're going to be coming back each and every week. Nate, anything else you want to touch base on before we get out of here tonight?
No, I will just say thank you for everybody that tuned in for our Halloween spooktacular with Dan looking extra creepy there with his horny hat and everything extra he's got going on. But in all seriousness, we appreciate all of you very much. Do be sure to jump into the description of this YouTube video. Click on the Canva link. You can get a free trial to Canva just by clicking on our link, and you can get consultation from us and Brother Matt, the best in the industry. As I said again, if you're doing any kind of live streaming, any kind of work on YouTube, it's important to look good. Brother Matt will help you make you look good. So big shout out to Brother Matt. As you mentioned, he is fucking killing it. We threw the Halloween thing at him and he nailed that as well. So Brother Matt always does fantastic work. We would be nothing without him. So we're very grateful for him. Thank you to everybody that watched live. That's a big, big thank you. And also please, dropping us a sub and a like on YouTube goes a million miles in our hearts. So if you're not subbed yet, drop us a sub on YouTube. We're dangerously close to 200 followers, and it's a goal that we want to hit before the end of the year.
Yeah, man. Nate, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Love kicking it with you each and every Friday night here on SODFS. He is Nate. I am Dan. This is SODFS signing off. Much love to everybody out there.